What up y'all, I'm Cito from Stencil Stop, and today we're going to talk about overspray when working with spray paint and stencils. First we're going to go over some methods of how to not use spray paint with your stencils, and then we're going to go over the proper method and techniques of using a stencil with spray paint to keep a clean, tight edge. The first thing to take note of when you're painting a stencil is where the edges of the design are, and you're going to want to paint away from those edges. So this actually doesn't look too bad, but what we want to do next time is make sure that when we're painting against these edges, I was taking the paint can and going this way with the spray. But next time, to get a tighter edge and not see this overspray, we can take the can and go the opposite way. And what that does is it keeps a cleaner, tighter edge. The second method of not properly painting your stencil to avoid overspray is using the paint can and keeping it too close to the surface that you're painting. When you are painting too close to the surface, your paint's gonna be a little bit more wet and kind of drippy than you want it to be. The ideal length of where you want to paint is about 8 to 12 inches away from the surface of what you're painting, and we're gonna show what it looks like when you get a little bit closer than that. This is definitely not what we want to see. As you can see, this is way too thick on there. It's dripping down. I was way too close to the surface. So the next improper method of using our stencil to not avoid overspray is to not hold down the surface of the stencil as tightly as possible against what you're painting. As you can see here, there are certain areas where the stencil kind of pops up. Ideally, you want to hold those areas down, but we're not going to do that, and we're going to see what happens. As you can see in these little areas here, you still got some overspray all around these areas where I didn't hold down. You can kind of see it popping up. The spray of the paint from the can is getting up under that stencil and popping it up, and that's allowing some of that paint to get under the edge. The last bad technique we're gonna go over to make overspray happen on your stencil is using the spray can and being a little too heavy with the trigger, holding it down more than you need to. As you could see when I was painting it, the can was actually the right distance away the whole time from the surface, or most of the time. And we still got super thick, wet areas dripping down. So for our final stencil, we are gonna put together all of our 4 techniques to make sure that we avoid underspray as much as we possibly can, is to paint away from our edges, hold the spray can at the right distance, which is 8 to 12 inches. We're gonna hold down the stencil against the surface, and the final thing that we're gonna make sure we do is to use the proper spray painting technique. Not this, but it's this. You're almost using it like as if it's a paintbrush. You're kind of dusting the surface. As you can see, this is the best result, I think, of the 5 that we've done so far. There are a couple different ways that we can hold down the stencils and we don't even need to use our hands. The one that you saw me employ here was the glove method, so I would kind of track along with where I was painting, deciding which areas I needed to hold down with where I was going to paint next. A couple other versions of that are using magnets, and that can be on a canvas that you're painting upright. There's the weights method, and the weights method is when you're painting straight down on the ground, and you can just use rocks or any heavy objects really that are small to tightly hold the stencil against the surface of what you're painting. And the third method is using an adhesive spray. You spray it on the back of your stencil and you can stick it right up against the surface. I've said it before in different videos, those can leave a residue. We haven't really tested those out thoroughly yet enough to recommend a specific one. I would do your own research before deciding which one that you want to go with for that method.